Hello, everyone. This is your host, Tayyab Mahmood, and welcome to our podcast where we intend to give insights to developers and IT experts on latest QA trends and technologies and how inclusion of these can assist us in improvement of test activities and results. So, in today's episode, we'll be discussing that how does the introduction of QA processes, specifically automation practices, aid in the improvement of the quality, performance, reliability of the applications. Implementing the right kind of practices can prove seemingly effectively for the overall health of the software testing lifecycle. Today we have with us in our panel Isma Tipu. She is a senior QA engineer here at Xgrid and has a noticeable industry experience. Welcome. And we also have Hassan Abbas Kazmi. Hassan has experience in automation of real-time applications. Thank you both for joining. Okay, so before we get into the technical details, so Isma, tell us about some of the most important trends in 2023.
Okay, so thank you, Tayyab, for this question, and it's kind of a great start to our discussion today. So when we're talking about trends, the number one thing that comes into my mind is the process, when we're talking about it, the robotic process automation and its integration with AI. And especially the companies nowadays, they are kind of using a more agile based approach, and they kind of need to roll out the releases more faster. So RPA. So first of all, what is RPA? So RPA kind of works on the principle of automating repetitive tasks, right? And machine learning and AI, on the other hand, it kind of works with unstructured data, and it kind of makes more informed decisions. So when we compile RPA with AI, it kind of gives us more accuracy in our test results. We can kind of get more intelligent automation pipeline. So these kind of integrations, they kind of help us also analyze the past test data, and kind of tell us that these test cases can be automated. For example, some key functional areas of the application which might need some manual intervention. So yeah, this is kind of important. Another thing that's picking up the pace this year is cloud-based testing infrastructure, and it refers to the use of cloud computing services to give the testing team kind of platform which is more centralized and you can say more scalable. So it kind of gives us a more functional setting where testing team can access remote resources. For example, they can work with some kind of hardware, they can access certain test environments. So the idea behind it is to eliminate the need of using on-premise solutions. Another thing that we need to discuss is the increased use of security testing. So you can see that nowadays we are facing a lot of issues related to security. The applications are facing such kind of issues, and cyber threats are kind of getting more sophisticated. So we will be seeing QA teams working on this when in the year 2023 and forward as well. And we kind of need to have a certain process in place where QA teams can test the systems, check their security, and there will be increase in the tools as well which are exposing such vulnerabilities. These are kind of some of the trends that we need to talk about when we're in this year.
So how can team effectively prioritize which tasks to automate?
That's a very good question, right? And I would love to address this. So when we're thinking about prioritizing which tasks to automate, the first thing that we need to consider is to see that which kind of tasks are more time consuming and which tasks are repetitive, because these kind of tasks are you can say an ideal candidate for automation, and it saves up our time, and it proves the effectiveness of automation itself. Another thing that we need to consider is check the complexity of the task, right? So there are certain tasks out there which are kind of more complex, which need more resources, and we might not have a certain team with that kind of skill set. So we need to see that is it feasible, and is it possible to automate that stuff. Will it allow us in our deadlines and our time frame that we have? Also, important thing to consider is the impact of automation. So this kind of impact can be on the organization itself, on the teams, and what kind of impact it does have on the customers as well. So we need to have certain questions in mind. For example, is the impact positive, right? Is it more cost effective, and is it improving the accuracy of our applications? So these kind of questions, they should be in your mind when you're prioritizing your tasks, right?
That was informative. So, Isma, tell us what are some of the popular tools and frameworks for different type of QA automation?
So when we're talking about the popular frameworks provided to us by different organizations, the first thing that we need to discuss is CyPress. So CyPress is kind of a very comprehensive end-to-end testing framework, right? It has simpler APIs, it's more easy to use, it has support for JavaScript as well, and it's kind of a very ideal candidate when you're automating real-time applications. And when we're talking about CyPress, we got to consider Selenium as well. So Selenium also has a lot of resources. It has kind of an extended support as well, and it makes easier for QA teams to integrate it with our CI/CD pipelines. Also, when we're talking about performance analysis of the system, where we have to do load testing and stress testing of the applications, we have to consider JMeter, right? So it's kind of a full multi-threading framework, you can say. It has certain scripting capabilities. It has a support for multiple protocols as well. So yeah, it's kind of a very good thing when a kind of a tool when we are performing load testing of the applications. Also, when we're talking about mobile automation, we have to think about Appium as well. So then again, Appium has a plethora of resources. It has support for languages like Ruby and kind of Python as well. And it's very good for the testers and the testing team when they're kind of working on the mobile automation side. Also, lastly, when we're talking about API testing and automation of the APIs, we have to consider Postman, right? So Postman is kind of a tool which allows us to craft certain API requests. It allows for the option of automating APIs as well. You can work with monitors, you can work with collections and such sort of integrations. So yes, these are some of the popular tools that we are working right now.
That's really interesting. So we have all these choices to work with, and we can kind of scale out of the the best tools by weighing in the pros and cons of this. So thank you, Isma, for your wonderful thoughts. And I would like to now switch over to Hassan and would like to understand how organizations can implement continuous deployment and continuous integration and QA automation.
That's a really great question, Tayyab. Thank you for asking me. Basically, there is a pretty well-defined set of steps that can be followed to ensure that continuous integration and continuous deployment are implemented correctly in an organization. So I'll start with a very obvious step. That is setting up an VCS that could track changes to your code base. Furthermore, implementing a VCS such as Git, with that allows you to track your code changes, that allow you to collaborate with others, lets others review your code and respond with better ideas to help you refine your code and make it into a more better approach. After VCS, we can come to the CD and CI tool preference. Mostly in our organization and other organizations, Jenkins is preferred for this sort of operation. And what it does basically, it automates the testing practices and the building, the deployment of your code. Basically, this tool should be able to pull the code from VCS and run tests and generate a build for deployment. Okay, when you're done with setting up your Jenkins, you need to define a pipeline. Basically, a pipeline defines all the steps that the code goes through, and from like initial check-in to the deployment to the last part, that is the deployment. Each stage of the pipeline should have its own number of tests to ensure that the code is ready for the next stage, so that there is no problem in between the stages and having corrupted code or having misinformated code like transfer over to the next stage. And then we have our automated tests, which serve as a validation check, and they run as a part of the pipeline to validate the code at each step and at each stage, so that they can catch errors easily and before the code goes into production. And then we come on to the last part, that is basically we monitor the production. And what that does is it helps us identify any issues that may arise after deployment or like during it, so that they can be quickly fixed.
So, Isma, we have heard a lot about use of AI and ML in QA automation. So, give us some insights on how actually we can use AI and ML in QA automation.
Okay, thank you, for this question. So before I get to the technical details, I need to, put a highlight on what is AI, right? So AI is kind of a simulation of human intelligence and its processes by certain machines, or you can say computerized systems. And machine learning is kind of a subset of AI, right? So what machine learning does, it allows these applications to learn on their own and work on their own without the need of explicit programming. So when we're talking explicitly, the use of AI and machine learning in testing and testing automation, we are introducing the element of prioritizing the test execution cycle. So these kind of techniques, they allow us to prioritize those test cases which are prone to uncovering more defects, right? So we also have an application of AI and machine learning in test case generation, right? So for example, we have test cases that are based on user interactions. So the application of AI does is that it data mines their logs and their behaviors with the application, and gives us certain data which is helpful in generating new test cases. Also, when we're talking about test maintenance, when the application is evolving, AI and machine learning kind of gives us the test cases that can be automatically generated.
So now we understand the importance of QA automation and its vital role in the overall QA process. But how does it fit in? How does it integrate into the overall QA process?
That is a really nice question. Basically, QA automation can be integrated with the overall QA process in a very definitive way. We can start off with the very first step in the QA process, and that is requirements gathering. When we are doing that, we should put in the QA automation tools and techniques, and we should consider this early in the software development process. And then during that, we should ensure that automated testing is built into the overall QA plan, like the SDLC plan of the project, right? And then we move on to the test in development. I'll start listing all the points that are included in the QA process, and that is the second point. That test in development is that the QA team should develop a test plan that includes automated testing, specifying the type of test to be automated and the tools to be used. The test plan should also include a schedule for automation testing and identify the resources required beforehand. And then there is test case creation. Automated test cases should be created based on the test plan and should be kept up to date as the application evolves. And the test cases should be maintained in a centralized repository, making it easier to manage and review the tests. Then we come on to the continuous integration part, the CI part. And basically that we should allow tests to be run automatically whenever code changes are made. This helps to catch and fix defects early in the development process. Then we have test execution. Automated tests should be executed on a regular basis. For example, as a part of the CI process or during nightly builds. The results of the test should be analyzed and used to be identified and fix defects. Then we've got maintenance, that we should be the automated tests that we create once should be kept up to date as the application evolves, and any changes should be reflected in the test. The QA team should regularly review and update the automated tests to ensure they're effective and relevant. Lastly, we come to the CD part, the continuous deployment. Automated tests should be integrated into the CD process, allowing application to be deployed automatically to production when it is released.
So these kind of techniques can, not only help the testing team, it can actually build the application in itself in the long run, right? So where we have a quality automated pipeline and we have minimized the turnaround time as well. So how can teams really, continually evaluate and improve their QA automation process?
Okay, that's great, Tayyab. And when we're continually evaluating the performance, we need to see that there are certain key performance indicators in place, right? And we need to associate these indicators with certain tasks. For example, there has to be a certain criteria for measurement, which can be tracked over time, right? So these kind of metrics can be number of test cases automated, number of scripts that ran successfully, and maybe even the time that was taken for the execution of the tests. So when we are done defining the metrics, we need to see and identify the key areas of improvement, right? And we need to associate and integrate certain changes after we have identified those key areas, right? So these kind of changes, they can be updates to the scripts, they can be adding something to your plan, which can be fruitful, right? You can be adding number of other things as well. So after we have identified that certain kind of changes can be made, we need to evaluate what's the impact of these changes after we have integrated them, right? So we need to continually evaluate the test results. We need to see if they are impacting us in a positive way, right? And one other thing that we need to consider is the element of QA is a process of continuous improvement, right? So we need to continually evaluate and improve our QA automation pipeline and our processes, and see where we need those changes, right?
All right, that's great. So we know, we agree on this, that the automation and manual testing both go hand in hand, right? So there's no one silver bullet, I would say, that manual testing is the answer to all the problems, or the automation is the answer to all the problems. So how do you actually balance to minimize the risk?
Okay, so this is a pretty interesting topic in itself. The basic is this: there's a divide right between in the QA, right? Like there is a thought process that goes on in each company, is that QA is the enemy of all other departments. But little do they know that in between the QA, right in the middle of it, we have a divide, which is exactly as the question suggested: the manual QA and the automation QA. Okay, so before traversing further into the answer, I would like to tell you the difference between both and the both advantages of both. The thing is that when you have manual QA, you have a perfect chance to explore and get into all the ATPT details of every project that you need to work on and that you need to do QA on. And for automation is basically for all that work that is repetitive, or all that regression testing, and the fact that you already know what information you have, and you need to automate the time consuming part of it. So then I'll get to the question, and I'll explain that most importantly, we identify tasks that are suitable for automation, right? Not every other task that you do is like dependent on the fact that it should be automated. No. As I mentioned before, we automate repetitive or time-consuming tasks such as regression testing and data validation, right? Then comes defining clear goals. We can set clear goals, clear objectives for both manual and automated testing to ensure that they complement each other. For example, manual QA can be done for testing all the new features on a dashboard, and for the same dashboard, automation QA can be done for regression testing if that the UI or any other changes that are made into the website, can the newer version of QA can that handle the difference. That's basically regression testing. And lastly, we can mention the collaboration. Collaboration is we can encourage in communication between manual testers and automation engineers to ensure both are working hand to hand towards the same goal. Following that, regular reviews of both kinds of tests can be easily done to identify areas for improvement. And to finish this question, I'll explain that we can adapt to changes. We can be flexible and adjust the balance between manual and automated testing as the project evolves and new risks are emerging.
Thank you for sharing this information. So, Isma, tell us, what are some of the strategies for training and knowledge sharing of QA automation?
Okay, Tayyab. So this kind of question is kind of very important, right? So when we're thinking about the training and the knowledge strategies that we need to implement, we first need to consider the aspect of introducing formal training. So this is kind of the most effective method when you're dealing with your teams. You can achieve this through webinars. You can conduct workshops and have even in-person training as well. So you need to have a certain idea in mind that these kind of trainings should have the best practices of QA automation. They should have the latest tools and technologies that the team will be sharing. So the other thing that we need to consider is the use of real world examples, right? So we need to kind of demonstrate to our teams that what's the effectiveness of using QA automation, right? So the third thing that we need to consider is to have some hands-on experience. We need to have teams educate themselves and do certain hands-on training. We can have a sandbox environment where people can create new test cases. They can create their scripts, they can run their scripts, and do all of the automation that they can. Another thing that we need to consider is to have the element of collaboration. We need to teach our teams to collaborate on certain topics, or we can introduce certain platforms. For example, we can have wikis, we can have forums where people can discuss their ideas. They can share their experiences when they're working on the automation. They can also share their blockers or the problems that they're facing. So these kind of strategies, they need to be in place when we are training our teams and giving them knowledge.
Okay, Hassan, how can teams effectively communicate the progress and QA status to different stakeholders?
Okay, so that's a pretty good question. I'd like to start by mentioning the one technique that is mostly used by every team, and that is basically regular progress reports. These reports usually include daily progress made, information on test coverage, test execution times, defect density, etc. The key nature of these reports they are presented in an easy to understand fashion, and that they are tailored to the specific needs of each client or each stakeholder of ours. And these are the kind of an integral part of our communicating the progress of our QA activities. And then similarly, we have status meetings that can be held by the teams to discuss the progress of automation with the stakeholders. One of the important reasons for this is that these meetings provide an opportunity for stakeholders to ask questions, provide feedback, and discuss any concerns that they may have. This also promotes stakeholder participation with the opportunity to review test cases before they go into deployment and provide feedback on the automation process, kind of letting the audience know what's happening behind the curtains. So yeah. Furthermore, dashboards and metrics can be used to communicate the status of automation efforts to stakeholders. These dashboards can provide visual, real-time information on the progress of automation, and it should be accessible to all stakeholders. We can integrate such solutions, that are already out there, which can be utilized for this activity. Lastly, regular demos of the QA automation process can be provided to stakeholders. This will help them see the progress firsthand and provide feedback so that they can be actually feeling like a good, intense part of this activity.
So now we understand the importance of AI and ML in the QA automation. So what do you think? Is ChatGPT going to eliminate your jobs?
No, Tayyab, I don't think that ChatGPT is that powerful that it can eliminate our jobs. Yeah, sure, it's an AI powered solution, but yeah, it kind of helps us. It kind of provides a platform where we can discuss ideas. We can share our problems, and it kind of answers that. Yeah, right. So it's kind of limited to that. I don't think that it will completely eliminate everything, and we will be jobless. So it's kind of a very great initiative. Because I've used ChatGPT as well, and also for this podcast, I've Googled certain things. So yeah, I think it's a very good tool, but I don't see it replacing us, or maybe
Okay, so Hassan, you have any ideas?
Yes, I kind of do. Definitively, I believe that ChatGPT is an opening to a better future. But whose better future? That's the question. Because that's what you have to answer when you look into the eyes of millions of people and you tell them that no, it's completely harmless, it's not going to do anything. But answer me this. If you keep feeding all of the world's laws and physics and every single principle of how to live and how not to live into ChatGPT, once its entire model has been trained completely, what do you think the next step of that self-sustaining knowledge base would be to conquer what made it in the first place? Don't you think so?
Yeah, so that's what I want to hear from you. So you guys are completely confident that your jobs are secure, right?
Yeah. I think it uses certain kind of models. For example, it's using natural language processing, but I don't think that it will be trained to that extent that it will be taking over the world. So I don't think the jobs will be completely replaced. It's sure is a very good AI powered solution, but yeah, even if you're feeding new things to it, there has to be a certain extent where it kind of works, right? So yeah, I think it's a great initiative, but I don't see it replacing us in the near future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And